Welcome to WP-Tonic, episode 109. Today we're talking content and copywriting. What's the difference between effective web copy and effective print copy? My panel today is Sally Getch, Brian Jackson, and Jonathan Denwood. Brian, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, So I'm an inbound marketer for KeyCDN, and I guess you could say, to put it easily, we focus on speeding up websites, I guess, the easy way to put it. And we are a content delivery network, which means, we copy contents of your data and we store it on, little servers around the world. And then it's faster for people because when they visit it, the content is then served from the servers closer to them. That's probably the easiest way to explain that.
Yep. Very awesome. Sally, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Sally Getch. I build WordPress websites for small businesses and nonprofits over at WP Fangirl, and I am the organizer of the East Bay WordPress meetup in Oakland, California.
And Jonathan, my co-host, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm the founder of WP-Tonic. We're a service maintenance company we support WordPress websites. We do all the boring stuff so you can concentrate on your business and make money.
Sweet. Well, I'm John Locke, and I run a small WordPress consultancy in Sacramento called Lockdown Design. So before we get into today's main topic, let's go over a couple news stories that are happening in the WordPress space. And story number one is from WP Tavern reporting that Codable.io bought back shares from early investors, and they're partnering with WooCommerce. Brian, how do you see this as a strategic move by Codable?
Yeah, no, that's really interesting, actually. It's interesting, too. There's a lot of stuff happening with WooCommerce lately, especially with their change to their main domain now, finally. I thought that would happen years ago, and it finally did. I think everyone saw that coming eventually. I think the partnership is probably going to be good. Automatic, it seems like, is now a beast. A beast, almost like a monopoly now. And so I'm curious how this is going to affect that long term. I see it only helping the WordPress community, though, really. I mean, Codable is a great source. I actually refer anybody that needs help. Maybe I should be referring to you guys, but I send them all to Codable right now. So maybe we can chat later too. But even on my website right now, it says, I don't accept new clients. If you need help, go to Codable. That's actually what it says in my contact forms. So I've chatted with their CEO before, and I really like what they're doing over there, and I think they actually do provide a really, really good service. So I think this recent news about the buying back shares, it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Sally, what are your thoughts on this?
It seems to me this is actually two stories that they sort of pushed into one because they don't really appear to be related. I mean, they're buying back shares. I've never run a company where you have, where I've needed to look for investors or anything like that. But their argument was pretty clear. We want to buy back these shares in case we want to raise more money later, and we still want to, maintain control of the company. And I think that partnering with Automatic is certainly going to be good for them. And of course, WooCommerce specifically is an area that that people need support with. I had somebody talking to me about it yesterday about various kinds of WordPress support, and particularly for e-commerce, because that's not necessarily a simple thing to get set up. And it's about time that they switch the domain names, because it's for darn sure that the themes are not why Automatic bought them.
Jonathan, what are your thoughts on this story?
Well, obviously I would be interested in it. That's why I suggested it. But I think it's a multifaceted story, on various layers. Obviously the buying back of shares isn't in some ways that interesting. But what was interesting to me is that, they're saying per month they've got a 9% growth, which is amazing. Got 250 developers on their books. I think they were saying quite a healthy monthly net income coming in. Got 12 full-time staff, and I think the other thing that I've learned is, when they were talking about how they set up the company, they, having WooCommerce as an initial investor, and also a partner that referred clients to them was rather handy, wasn't it, John? Pretty smart moves, really. These Danish people, well, Sally has met a few as also. They're pretty clever, aren't they? Actually, Sally, aren't they? They're pretty clever.
Yes. Well, apparently the Dutch people have jokes about, don't get a Danish CEO for your business. But so far, these, Codable seems to be doing great. And, it's significant about the share buyback because it means they're actually, profitable enough to be able to do that.
But I also agree with Brian. I wouldn't say it's a concern, but old Matt and his crew seem to be buying a lot of companies up, and they've got a lot of fingers and a lot of pies, haven't they, Brian?
Yeah, it's almost. I'm a big fan of WordPress. I love what he did, but I almost see them kind of more like a Walmart now. It's just kind of they're this huge monopoly, and they own all this other stuff. But yeah, there's stories about them happening all the time, and they're partnering with all these places. So it'll be interesting, I'm sure, like 5 years from now to see what's actually happening with all this stuff. Yeah,
I think the interesting part of that was what happened in WordCamp Europe. When Matt was being interviewed, and it was there was that moment when he was told about, how many, I forgot the percentage of themes in the repertoire that weren't responsive. What was it, John, about? Have we got a jet fighter? Is it a Turkish jet fighter?
It's just a train.
It's a train, isn't it? But I actually thought it was a Turkish.
Yeah, Tom Cruise is flying overhead.
Right. So let's get back to point. When he was told, I forgot the percentage. I think it was a third. Was it, John? Of the themes weren't responsive, and you could see the kind of look of shock and horror on his face. But I thought it was a little bit concerning that the CEO didn't know that a third of his themes weren't responsive, and really but I kind of link it to what Brian's just said. I think the top management's a little bit stretched because they've got so many fingers in so many pies now, and I think that showed in that moment in WordCamp Europe because he really didn't know, and I think that's a little bit alarming, really, but that's just my point of view. What do you think, Sam?
Yeah. Yes, sorry, train is still going by. It does seem like they're, reaching out in a lot of directions at once, and that's, not such unusual behavior if you look at, Facebook buying things or Google buying things, or, the companies do this sort of stuff. I don't know whether it's really going to look like, they're trying to buy everybody or they're just trying to buy certain things that fit in with their, where they're planning to take the company. I certainly didn't know that, there were that many themes in the repository that weren't responsive. I don't know whether the theme review team knew that. I'm not sure how easy it is to find out. And I'm not sure that level of information is what Matt is supposed to be doing at this time. Although possibly, somebody else should have found it out and reported it to him. It does seem like a ridiculously large number, in 2016. But, we look at the plugin directory and all the things we have where, they're flagged now that they haven't been updated for X number of years, but they're still there. A little clearing of clutter might be in order, but then you kind of have to figure out, well, who decides that and how do they do it? And basically there are 2 people reviewing plugins right now and a handful of people reviewing themes, and they're already pretty stretched.
I think that situation will be rectified. I think they'll make it a requirement and they'll give people enough time to make their themes responsive. But I can see that being a requirement like pretty quickly on the horizon. I think as far as like the main story, like Codeable buying back shares, they're obviously focused on growth. They want to retain control. And they know that if you sell too much of your company to an investor, you kind of like lose some of your say in where you're going. And I think them partnering with WooCommerce, I think that's good for Automatic and WooCommerce, and I think it's good for Codeable for the platform of WordPress to get the next 25% of market share. They're going to need reliable people that they can refer customers and clients to when they need help. And I think Codeable is proving themselves. Jonathan is having a laughing fit over in the corner.
I'm crying. I'm crying. No.
Yeah. Well, speaking of becoming a beast, do we actually want WordPress to get, the next 25% and the next 25% after that? Because
I think that's going to be a lot harder than the first 25. Anyway, so on to our second news story. Twerk published an article on 45 plugins that are alternatives to the modules in Jetpack. Brian, of the customers that you have, how many people use Jetpack? And do you see Jetpack as a drain on resources? I mean,
so hopefully nobody takes offense to this, but I'm very, I guess working for a content delivery network, I'm very OCD. Even on my own websites, I'm aiming for that 600 millisecond load time, which is probably more than most people are. Or even, I've hit the 150 millisecond barrier before on a fresh install. That's where I'm really aiming for my sites. And with Jetpack, I'm not a fan. I'll just put it out there. I hate Jetpack. So people can take that and think what they want. But it's because I feel like it's almost like a theme forest theme, where it's just become this bloated plugin. And it's not to say it can't run well. Like you can pick it apart and actually use certain pieces. So if you use it the right way, it can be done well. And the same with the Aveda theme. I've gotten that to load really fast too. But if you load the whole thing, it's a horrible thing. So, and a lot of people, WordPress users, don't know how to do that, which, if you put it all out there, it ends up being really slow. So I think that's a big pet peeve I have of developers, that I think they need to worry more about performance, and they don't. Jetpack, another thing is, they have that Photon CDN in there running. I'm not a big fan of that. You've probably seen that .iwp in the image URLs before. It's not a full-fledged CDN, and I think they're trying to market it as a CDN to people, because I've seen, even on discussions in the WordPress forums, people say, oh, well, this is a free photo CDN. Well, if you know really what a CDN is, it's a dumbed down, cheap CDN is what it is. And so, there's not a lot of pops. There's not, I don't know if it has HTTP2 support yet. I don't look that much into Photon anymore, just because I don't use it as much. But there's a lot of things it doesn't have, and I think they sometimes market it as performance when really, there's a lot better ways to do performance. So I guess that's my take on Jetpack.
Yeah. So do you think a lot of people just leave stuff enabled that shouldn't be enabled? They kind of don't know how to go. Yeah.
Yeah. I see it almost every day. I see, anyone that uses Jetpack, I would say 85%, they enable every single thing in there, and that's what they're running. And then on their website, you look through their HTTP requests and you see pretty much all this crap. It's not all Jetpack's fault, but it's partially the user's fault as well.
So what you're saying in essence is they don't need to be using beautiful math or anything like that, probably.
Oh, no.
I run it every time on one of the websites I'm maintaining. Love it, So.
Yeah, Yeah.
But hey, you never know if you're going to need to like, put out a math equation on your site, or you just never know.
So that's a whole other reason I don't like. But yeah.
Yeah, one does wonder a little bit
Sally.
about some of their choices to put things in there, because it must be a pretty tiny fraction of sites that need beautiful math. Now, the ones that need to do something like this, they really need it. But, as this article says, there are already plugins for that. I mean, there's nothing terribly new in this article. All of these alternatives have been mentioned somewhere in some other article that I've read over the past several years. And my approach to Jetpack tends to be, if I'm going to be using, sort of like 4 or more of its features, I may install it and then be very careful that anything I'm not using is disabled. And if I only need 1 or 2 of the things it does, I will install a different plugin for it. Because, if you need 7 or 8 of the things that Jetpack is doing, installing 7 or 8 separate plugins for it is not necessarily going to be any more efficient than installing Jetpack. Yeah, I mean, I think probably, everything should be deactivated by default, and you should have to turn it on as you need it.
I think that would actually be a better idea, but for some reason they just kind of make that choice for you, and I think people don't disable those. Jonathan, what's your thoughts on Jetpack?
It's really, I'm going to come across such a bitch. Well, what Sally said, I totally agree. Always sensible. Sally's always very sensible. They're such a nice group of people, and it makes it so difficult to tell that it's just a dog of a plugin. It's a dog of an idea. It should just be put out and killed somewhere humanely. But, you just never want to say it because they're such nice developers and they're such nice people. When you go to the WordCamps, they're always such, great crew, aren't they? But I just despise it. I despise the philosophy behind it, how it works. I just hate it. I'm worse than Brian, I just...
Gosh, Jonathan, tell us how you really feel.
It's just one of those things where, I just don't understand it. I don't understand where it... I do understand, because it's linked to WordPress.com, and, it's like a lot of things when you have different business priorities, you end up with something like Jetpack. That's the reality. That's why you end up with a dog like that. And I just despise the whole thing. Sorry, folks. Well, they're not going to be sponsors, are they? Cool. They're not going to be sponsors, John, are they?
No, and I think...
Well, I'll have to be honest. I do use Jetpack on some sites, but I might enable maybe 3 or 4 things at the most. But I think back to something that Matt said before, is Jetpack is almost like a gateway to people using WordPress, and a way for people to, newbie users, beginner users, to be able to put a bunch of stuff up with one, plugin that's kind of a suite of a whole bunch of other plugins. What are your thoughts on that, Brian? Do you think Jetpack is effective as bringing in beginner users to the WordPress ecosystem?
I think it is. I mean, there's I feel 2 different ways with that one. I think it might help, but I think there's so many really, really good bloggers out there. Even myself, I blog on, workup.com, and I spend, many, many hours writing these dumbed down tutorials to help WordPress users. And I think there's so many good tutorials out there by bloggers that help people learn, here are the good plugins to use. Here's screenshots step-by-step of how to use them. So I think there are better alternatives now for newer people not knowing what to do, of, finding these bloggers out there just by going to Google and seeing these are the good caching plugins. These are the good, social sharing plugins. And then, obviously there might be some testing involved, but even if they pick out of those lists, I think they're still maybe better off than Jetpack.
Yeah, just get that GoDaddy, get that Bluehost crap hosting, and bun Jetpack on, and turn your site into treacle. That's a real good experience for a newbie, isn't it?
On those
right, isn't it?
Anyway,
that's a great experience, isn't it?
Yes, but I think it's not so much for like the total WordPress newbie who's never had anything to do with WordPress, but kind of the person who's trying to transition from WordPress.com to a self-hosted WordPress site, because they're accustomed to the features in Jetpack, and they're sort of like, well, where is this? Well, that's sort of what it does. Now, most of us, we're not using WordPress.com because we don't necessarily like the way it works that much. But I can, I can see how it would be, I can sort of see the logic behind that. But, as a totally new person using WordPress, I don't know that Jetpack is going to seem any more comprehensible than anything else.
No, I totally see what you're saying there. Like, it's more to transition the .com people into self-hosted. Okay, well, I think we're going to take a break, and then we're going to go into the main news story, or not the main news story, but we're going to go into our main topic, which is talking about copywriting, why we need it, and what's the difference between effective web copy and print copy. So, see you after the break.
Buying or selling a home in the greater Reno Tahoe area? I know the best CRS real estate broker, and that's Karen Conrad, and you can find her at KarenConrad.com or call her directly at 775-527-7021.
And we're back from the break, and now we're going into the main topic. We're talking about web copy, hiring a copywriter, and what makes good, effective web copy. We'll start with Brian. When you were putting together Key CDN, the site, how much thought did you put into the copywriting, and did you hire someone just to, write the copy and the sales pages?
There's two of us that are writing all the content right now. One of us, the other one focuses more on the support side, and I run, if you see the blog, I'm the one writing all the blog content, and a lot of, we work on the landing pages together too and stuff like that. But as far as copywriting, I think too, you have to, I'm an SEO guy by trade. And so whenever I hear copyright, I think Google and I think rankings. And so it's not as far as, obviously you got to have your grammar correct. You got to make sure you're not copying anyone to, you got to, run your stuff through Copyscape, all that technical stuff. But, as far as key CDN goes, we're still very heavily focused on keyword research and focusing on keywords that, that Google likes to hear. And then also as far as, what users want to see. And then, so for right now, we don't outsource our copy because our copy to us is golden. So we don't pay other writers. We don't pay copywriters. And so, all of it's done by myself and one other person. So yeah, I guess, content is king. I think that saying is still alive and well. Even though with this recent transition from Google a couple of weeks ago on keywords now grouping up together, I don't know if anyone saw that in the keyword planner. Very frustrating for me. But like if you look up a keyword, say CDN and content delivery network, the keyword planner now shows you the exact same search volume for those two keywords. Well, which they're about 30,000 volume search difference. So,
don't want to go too off topic, but it's been this is just my opinion, Brian. It's just a continuous assault on organic search by Google. Mm-hmm. The harder, they've always. It's a bit very similar to Jetpack. It's when you have conflicting business objectives. Their moneymaker is paid out advertisement, so they're no friend of organic search. But it was organic search that made the company, that made it what it is. So there's a contradiction.
Well, and if their search doesn't show up to be relevant, people are going to start using something else. We lost John.
He will return like MacArthur. I will return. Otherwise, I will. I know the episode will suffer, Sally, but I will have to take over as lead, won't I?
I guess so. Well, I think SEO is probably the biggest distinguisher between successful web copy and successful print copy, because you don't have to worry about search engines when you're writing print copy. Although, it's not that often anymore that people write copy that's going to be only used in one place and not in multiple places. But, kind of thinking about writing for the web versus writing for print, and the emphasis on sort of breaking things down and using headings and using lists, and you're making it easy to skim the things. If you're writing marketing copy, like, okay, how much content can you fit on a billboard? It's about equivalent to what you can put up over an image on Instagram. It needs to be very short and very much to the point, and integrated usually in some kind of visual background. And likewise, if you're writing an ad that people are going to be sort of, just their eye will happen to pass over it as they're looking for something else in the newspaper or that type of thing is actually pretty similar, that you want something that's going to grab someone's attention and give them a reason to care and to take an action. So, in terms of sales pages, it is harder to read sort of unbroken long form text on the web. And yet, you get people writing some pretty big posts in Medium and reading them, and they're not necessarily broken up that much. But I think, that certain aspects of sales copy are the same, medium to medium, except that, you do have to worry a lot more about the SEO in web copy. And so, this is where the sort of like, clever headlines that are fun to read in newspapers that, the British are particularly good at, flounder on the web because they don't mean anything to a search engine. You need to have something that's kind of more explicitly descriptive for a search engine, and that's partly why plugins like Yoast let you use sort of like one title for the humans to see and one title for the search engines to see, so that you can be sure to put keywords in there and not necessarily spoil your clever pun. But it's there's a big difference between writing marketing copy and writing other kinds of things.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. That's why me and John thought it was a good topic, because I think we, as web professionals, we can be just as guilty, especially with our own websites, because we've got normally a lot of things, a lot of balls we're juggling, and you slap content on, but to make it truly readable, which will help with the bounce rate. That's a term, folks. It means how long people stay on a website or a specific blog post, and the longer somebody stays on a specific article, the more Google likes it. Hopefully Brian will agree that I'm explaining that reasonably coherently. Obviously, we've got the Turks back. The Turkish jet fighters coming, folks. We'll get back on subject. So layout, like what Sally said, having short paragraphs, having H2s, having contrast, spending a little bit of time on breaking the article up in a consistent format that you can see it all over the Pacific website. Is important, but you do see it, not in the kind of top blogging sites or where there's an editing team normally, but even on some large corporate sites you do still see pretty crummy formatting, but it's normally on the smaller businesses, medium businesses, and it does really affect readability, because you can see that the people that are running the site, they're from a print background. Would you agree with that, Brian, or do you think I'm blabbing off into the distance?
No, I agree. And like what Sally said too, I think there's a big difference between print copy and web/marketing copy. And I've always lived in the web part of it, so I've never written for print, thank God. So I'm always thinking marketing wise, but I'm thinking, what will people see? What will people want to share? What will Google see? I'm always thinking in those lines. But yeah, I think like you said, breaking it up is very, very important. Because you can write a 5,000 word post, which Google might love, but if they only scroll down like 2 seconds, it's not really helping your business that much. And I was running some numbers the other day on some of my call to actions, and actually some of the top converting ones were actually the footer ones right at the end of the articles. So either people are skimming really fast and then clicking at the end, or they're actually reading some of that content. So I think it's important to realize that you want to get people to read all of that content, and sometimes that involves, breaking it up with what Sally said, H1s, H2s, H3s, still not just for Google but also for readability.
So, I guessing that we kind of covered this, but Sally, so making things like scannable. That is definitely something we're doing. Like in web copy, we're not trying to write like a 1,000-page novel here. We're trying to break it up into scannable chunks.
I think I answered that actually, John, because Sally's kind of switched herself off. Sally's having some trouble.
Sorry.
All right.
I just pressed that during the train, but go ahead, Jonathan.
No, Sally's having some trouble with the Turkish Air Force. Too
soon.
Yeah, it's scannable. I think that especially when you're dealing with clients that are not used to building websites, I've had this a few times where they hired somebody locally who's a proficient writer, but it's normally very experienced in the print medium and just thinks they can write for the web. And you get the copy, and it's like War and Peace, or they post it onto the pages, and you look at it, and it's unreadable, or you're going to get a very high bounce rate. For the things that Brian and Sally remarked about, you got to break it up into flow. I think I was really interested in what Brian said, but thinking about it, that's how I operate myself, Brian, is that I look at the heading, I scan the page, look at the subtitles, and then I look at the bottom for the summary, if there is a summary, and then I make a decision, am I going to read this in any more depth, or am I going to move on to another internal page, or am I going to leave the site? And I think that's how people operate. I'm as guilty as anybody on my own website not putting a good summary, and actually that's something me and John are going to have to think about. But there's a lot of factors going on here, John. It's like everything, isn't it, John? The more thought you put into it, the more hopefully return you're going to get.
Yeah, I think that's kind of true. It's definitely like when you're writing a sales page, it's even a different kind of strategy than if you're writing a blog post. But here's a question for Brian. When you're writing for Key CDN, what sorts of things are you measuring? Are you doing A/B testing? Are you doing user testing before you publish it live? What sorts of things are you? What sorts of analytics and figures are you looking at to see if your copy is effective as it could be?
A couple things we do is, I think the first is you always want to keep your audience in mind. And so ours, of course, we're more on the, we have a lot of people that use WordPress, but we're more the developer end of it. So a lot of our articles are maybe the more advanced WordPress users, and then the more dev crowd using, Laravel, Ruby, all those kind of people. We try to hit both. So we do have some easier to read blog posts too. But I think one thing is your call to actions are very, very important. And a couple things we do is we actually use just simple UTM parameters on, say, like the sidebar and the footer call to actions. And then you can hook those up to goals and then see which ones actually convert more. And so you can see, maybe is your copy working as far as getting them down to the page, the bottom, and then converting at the bottom, or are people reading things on the side of the page? So that's something a little you can do. there's other tools you can use. We actually are big fans of Google Analytics. It's, free. And they actually have a very cool, we call it heat map and stuff in Google Analytics. A lot of people don't know that. And so there's other tools like Hotjar and stuff for popular ones you can use for heat maps and stuff. But Google Analytics has a great click map too. You can see what people are clicking on. And so we rely a lot actually on Google Analytics for that stuff.
Really cool.
And then we also rely on people, what they tell us. We've seen some articles, people don't like the content. And so we shift focus and we maybe never write about that again. So I think keeping your user in mind for what you're writing for your copy is probably the number one important thing.
That's definitely an important thing, no matter what you're writing. And it's, I think a lot of the really bad stuff I've seen on websites, I think, is written by people who just aren't used to writing copy of any kind. Print, or it's people who maybe their previous experiences, they've put together a Yellow Pages ad for their company, something they really don't know very much about it. In my former life, I was an academic, and there's a certain way you write when you're an academic, and it's fairly turgid, frankly. And you have to have lots of footnotes and so on. And when I shifted over to doing writing for business, that was a big difference. And, people do not sit there and read business books cover to cover most of the time. They do exactly the same thing they do on websites. They look for, headings and subheadings and lists and try to kind of get through it quickly to pull out what are the main ideas here. And you have to write in simpler language. You have to think more about, structuring this so that people can, quickly get pull out the main ideas and so on. And as John was offline, but I said, you can put about the same amount of text on a billboard as you can on an Instagram square. Right. There are formats both in print and online where you only have a very few words and you always have to make them count. And what you don't have is any kind of heat mapping tool to tell you what's working on your billboard.
Yeah. That's why I don't like print.
Yeah, I think another thing is, I think there's different levels of how people are going to treat the website. I've just been thinking about this over the past couple of days. I'll be interested to see if Brian or Sally agree with me. I think if you're selling a service or product on a website, I think you get people that come to your site through search, through articles, external links, and then they're in scanning mode and they're making a judgment. Am I going to stay on this site? Is this product worthwhile to meet my requirements? So I will study the content. So they're in what I call pre-buy mood. They're scanning. They're looking at various products, different websites. Let's say they're looking for a CDN. They're looking at multiple CDN providers. So they're in scanning mode. When they hit, then they make a choice of one or two sites that they're going to investigate a bit more. Then I think they get into a totally different mindset and they're reading everything on that website. They're reading. They're spending a lot of time. If they find grammar, spelling mistakes, other stuff, because they're transferred into a different mindset. They're looking for a reason not to buy your product, to go to the competitors. So if they find grammar, spelling, other stuff, or copy that's just obviously just been slapped on there, they're off to the competitors. So I think there's kind of two mindsets when they're looking. Would you agree with that, Brian?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. There's the buying mode, there's the searching mode, and I think websites, we deal with this at Kisi, and then actually it's a struggle as a marketer on a day-to-day basis. As if you write an article that's not related to your product as much, you're getting that search traffic, but do they have the buying intent for your own product? And so is it worthwhile putting that copy out there if they don't convert to your own product? So I think it's a struggle that every business is going to have. I see a lot of businesses writing random topics on random things that I know it's never going to convert to their product. So I don't know why they're spending that time an effort writing on that. We always try to tie in something as far as, web performance. It's always about web performance, web development, stuff like that. So hopefully those people are more in the buying mood, I guess you could say, than other people. But yeah, like you said, if they see bad grammar and stuff, I mean, even myself, like if I see bad ad copy on someone I'm comparing a tool against, like I'm just gone. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't get, I don't have to be anywhere far down the sales funnel to, if you are illiterate, I'm going away. It's like, I have some understanding for the people where, English is not their native language and they're going to make certain mistakes. But it's sort of like, if you're serious about having a professional project, you're going to have somebody proofread that for you. It just is, people judge that. And so you have to be very careful about it. But it is definitely true that, at the beginning phase of the sales funnel, they're, reading a little more casually. And at a later stage, that's when, depending on your product, is, when they might like download the white paper and read it in more detail, or go into, start looking for, we really want all of your specs so that we can make a decent comparison between these products. And so you want to make that level of detail available to people, but you don't want to shove it down their throats the first thing, before they even have decided to get that far into making comparisons.
So what you're saying is there's definitely like a funnel, but some people are pushy, or they're trying to make the sale like too early.
Yeah.
Cool. So here's Jonathan, what are your thoughts on that? Like, as far as like copy, sales funnels?
That's a whole other aspect, and it's, we could have a whole episode about that, what Sally's just brought up, because it varies with industry. I've got a product that's aimed for the real estate industry. Well, they want you to get to the point pretty quick. What benefits and features are there that going to help them get more sales, more leads. But then, then you've got to fulfill what Google wants, like what Brian has been said. So you got two competing things, and then I've found that with WP-Tonic or with my other product, if they really are serious about buying, they do spend a lot more time on the website, and they tend to come back multiple times. You can see that if you do set up Google Analytics or a tracking pixel or some form of tracking mechanism, a lot of them, I've had people in WP-Tonic that eventually have bought the service. They come back 20 times, John. They come back 20 times to the website before the buy. And I don't know if so that's what I find. John?
Oh, no, I think that's it. I think that people do have to get familiar with your brand before they ever make a buying decision. And I think a lot of times people make that buying decision, based on other things. So here's a question, Brian. How effective, or how important, I should say, is your copywriting like outside of your website? Say like guest posting, social media content. Do these things have an influence on people making a buying decision?
Yeah, I mean, they definitely do. We rely a lot on affiliates, and so we have great relationships with our affiliate marketers, and sometimes we rely on other people to help spread the word for us. If they like our product, it's a great way to increase your sales, is to rely on people. That goes back to the word of mouth thing in the good old days. Word of mouth is still alive and well. If people like your product, they'll shout it from the rooftops. They'll tweet it. They'll, relying on other people is very important. But as far as, ad copy is very important for guest blogging. We do a lot of guest blogging. I spend a majority of my week reaching out to other bloggers and other people. And sometimes I'm writing a post for their website. Sometimes I'm working with them on writing a post about our stuff. So I'm always dealing with copy going back and forth on external websites as well, not just our own website. So yeah, I think it's very important for businesses not just to focus on your own stuff, but also get copy everywhere you can. Good copy.
Cool. Sally, what are your thoughts on that external copy?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important for exactly the reasons that Brian said, if having other people talk about you. And it's also, you look at stuff like, how Webmaster Tools thinks, this is a good or a bad incoming link. You don't want obviously, spammy sources talking about your product, because that's going to bring you down. Now, of course, you can't really control who writes what. Although I think if you're deliberately establishing a relationship with someone, you probably want to see, they seem to be credible and intelligent and like, people we would want to have a relationship with, and announce that we have a relationship with. So you can't just sort of fling yourself out there, trying to grasp for, any and all incoming links or mentions or whatever, because it could really bite you on the rear.
No, I totally agree with what Sally says. I mean, we have a whole, domain authority, Ahrefs rating, Alexa rating, all this stuff before we even think about reaching out to a person, because I think there's tools like that you can utilize to see, is this person making a dent in the web industry? Is their website, authoritative enough to even be worth spending time putting copy on? I think some people don't look at that either too. If the site has no traffic, there's no reason to even put copy on their website. So, like you said, the links matter.
Yeah, it boggles my mind. I sometimes get emails from people who want to put a guest post on a blog I haven't written on since 2011. It's like, what earthly good do you think it would do you, even if I said yes?
Got to get backlinks, man.
Yeah, I think those people are still in the old days. I mean, they're just trying to get a backlink, but they don't really understand how backlinks really work. Is the problem.
Google has gotten smarter. Definitely.
Google's not an idiot. I don't like Google.
They do not hire stupid people at Google.
Okay, well, we're going to wrap up the first hour, and we're going to wrap up this portion of the show. Jonathan, should everybody tell us how to get a hold of them, or?
Yeah, sure. Why don't you ask our guest first to... So, Brian, how can people get hold of you for these words of wisdoms that you've shared with us on this WP-Tonic show, Brian?
I mean, I spend, if you want to see a lot of my writing, I spend a lot of it on the KeyCDN blog, so that's just keycdn.com. My Twitter, I'm very active on Twitter. It's probably the number one social place that I'm very active and communicate with people. That's just at Brian Lee Jackson, BrianLee Jackson. And my personal blog, it's workup, WOORKUP.com, and that's more for the marketing WordPress people. So if you're just really big into WordPress, you might want to check out my blog too.
Sally, how do people get a hold of you?
Sure. You can find me at WPFangirl.com, or I am at Sally Getch on Twitter and a variety of other things. If you can spell my name, you can find me. There's only one of me in Google.
And remember, rhymes with sketch?
Rhymes with sketch. Yes, that's what it is.
Jonathan, how do people get a hold of you?
Come to WP-Tonic, have a look at our product and services, have a good scan and then have a deep read. And if you need to get hold of me, I actually answer all my personal email. Brian will testify to that. And my Twitter as well. I do monitor my Twitter feed, don't I, Brian?
He does. He responded within a few minutes of me commenting on a podcast the other day of his.
Yeah, I respond to my Twitter feed and my email, folks. So if you email me directly at jonathan@wp-tonic.com, you get an answer pretty quick. And like Brian said, I am on Twitter observing.
Cool. And you can get a hold of me at my site, lockdowndesign.com, or you can follow me on Twitter, lockdown_. So, for episode 109 of WP-Tonic, saying see ya.
Bye.